Stress response is something that happens instinctually without thought. It happens in the moment, instantly, and it's often where time doesn't seem to exist because the reaction just takes over. Now, for us as women, you know about fight and flight, but the other stress response that is also quite common for women is fawning. And I did talk about this earlier in the challenge. Fawning is that need to people please. It's the need to back away from conflict, to keep quiet because we don't want to cause more tension than necessary. And for women who are natural born nurturers and carers, it is natural for us to run away from conflict, which is why we also often feel so stuck when it appears that we're living in a world of conflict. And when you've got growing teens that are becoming their own independent selves, it can definitely feel like you are living in a constant battle zone. I know that's the case for me anyhow. So stress responses, they're very interesting, and it is good for you to recognize what kind of stress response you are having, largely so that you can just give yourself a little bit more, again, space and grace to acknowledge and accept that you are being human. And in that very moment, the best thing that you can do genuinely is just try to stop and take a breath, because that allows time to catch up to the stress response, and it allows your thinking brain to catch up with your emotions, which is where you can then start to become a little bit more rational. That is easier said than done. I'm very well aware of that. And I want to share with you a little bit today about why that is. So much easier for someone who's on the outside of the situation to go, why don't you just do blah, blah, blah? And you on the inside go, as if it was that easy. If only it was that easy, right? So, what I want to talk to you more exclusively about is the recurring events that triggered those stress responses. Because, again, earlier in the week, I spoke about some of the differences, or one of the most significant difference between we as women and men is the function of our limbic system. Now, for those of you who don't know what a limbic system is, in very layman terms, it is the emotional control center in the brain. And for us women, our limbic system is a lot bigger. That means we tie a lot more emotion to the things that are happening to us, and we also relive the things that have happened to us in the past because the emotions drive the memory. Why this matters in terms of recurring events is because every time the same situation happens to you, so let's say, mornings are challenging for you and your family for whatever reason. Actually, interestingly enough, and I'm going off on tangent already, but interestingly enough, I was actually reading an article the other day that said um, teenagers' brains and the way that their sleeping patterns and their hormones fluctuate means that mornings are genuinely more difficult for teenagers, which makes so much sense to me because mornings have always been our challenge. And, me with my more mature adult brain look at the time and go, we've got to go, we've got to go, we've got things, things to do and places to be. But their teen brains are simply not alert. And I can't remember exactly what it was. I'll see if I can find it so I can share it in the group. But it had something to do with the first 30 minutes of waking for a teenager is they're quite doughy. Duh, that makes sense. But once they come out of that doughiness, their stress levels really escalate, which is why they can become so quick to temper and quick to attitude, right? So knowing that, if we can approach what we know to be challenging times, so again, kind of linking back to what we were talking about earlier this week, if you know that there are particular situations that are your triggers, when you are aware of the trigger, when you are aware of the complication, you can lead into that situation with a very different perspective and agenda if you are aware of the challenges beforehand. It's kind of like, and I don't like using the term, but sometimes I do feel like being a mum is living in a battle. If you can go into battle prepared, so you've got your ammunition, you've got your tools. If you can go in leading with them, knowing that they're right there with you, then you are prepared. And that preparedness can lead to more confidence, it can lead to more calm, and it can certainly lead to a lot more clarity in the way that you are seeing the situation. So when you know that there are challenges for recurring events, get a little bit smart about it, because sometimes I think we use the challenges as an excuse to be reactive. When in fact, if you know, for example, your mornings are challenging, if you know that there is a particular thing that happens in your household that triggers an argument, that then leaves you feeling speechless, like you can't communicate, like you can't express yourself, then rather than going into that next event blind, which it's really not blind, it's ignorant because you know that it's going to happen, right? So rather than going into it with that ignorant, maybe today will be different attitude, but not actually changing anything about it, what I encourage you to do is spend a little bit of time reflecting on that particular event and identifying what it is that you would want to say, what it is that you would want to do. Because remember, communication is not just about the words that you use either, it's about your actions. And I gave a prime example of that yesterday. Words were only going to exacerbate the situation and make it worse. Actions are what can often speak volumes, communicate your message clearly, but leave you feeling more confident and in control. And at the end of the day, that is what this challenge is all about. It's about giving you the hindsight before the event, so the foresight to